Hi everyone, my name is Makenzie Witter. I'm the Education and Public Programs Manager at the Curtis Museum. And today, since it's actually a very beautiful day in upstate New York, I am going to take advantage of that and take you all on the Curtis Heritage Trail. The Curtis Heritage Trail consists of 6 different locations within Hammondsport and the surrounding area that all have some kind of significance to Curtis history. There is a storyboard attached to each location that signifies that it is a part of the Curtis Heritage Trail. And it also has some more information and some photos, but I am going to include a map with this post too, so you all can visit these sites on your own. Now our first stop is going to be at Pawnee Square right in downtown Hammondsport, so I will see you all there. All right, so here we are at Pawnee Square, the first stop on the Curtis Heritage Trail. The square itself is actually pretty fascinating. It is a National Historic District with the various buildings around the square, the bandstand, which is right in front of us, and the square itself, all contributing to its historic status. But we're going to focus on is actually just right over here. You might be wondering why we're staring at the post office parking lot in Hammondsport, but that is because this is where Curtis's bicycle shop in Hammondsport once stood. So if we just step back a couple feet, you guys can see the storyboard that goes along with this and explains a little bit more about the bicycle shop in Hammondsport. But this is a spot where he first started experimenting with motorcycles and engines, and where his business grew to the point where he had to open up his own factory. And our next stop will be at that factory in Castle Hill. So I'll see you there. Alright, so our next stop is Castle Hill. This was actually the site of the Curtis family home, but by 1904 Glenn decided to build his factory here right beside his family home. It started out as just a very small factory, but by 1907, when he started to get into aviation and working with the AEA and Captain Baldwin, that factory grew. And by 1918, over 3,000 people were employed at this Curtis factory in Hammondsport. Alright, so here we are at Hammondsport Central School District. You guys can see the ball fields in the background. The school is to the right there, and at the upper left corner you guys can see Keuka Lake in the background as well. This was back in the early 1900s when Glenn first started working in aviation with Captain Baldwin and other early aviators, called the Experimental Flying Field, or Kingsley Flats. And a few years later, when Glenn opened up his flying school and began teaching other pilots, this was the site of the Curtis Flying School in Hammondsport. It did extend all the way to Keuka Lake, and in a minute we will be at the site on Champlain Beach right on Keuka Lake that talks more about his seaplane experiments. But right now we're going to talk a little bit more about the flying school in the experimental flying field. So on this plaque you will see more information when you visit here. It's just right here in front of the ball fields at Hammondsport Central School District. But you can see this image right here. We posted this online. You might have seen it around. It's Glenn's very first flight, and it is him in the dirigible, if I can get where the sun isn't glaring. And you can see, if you look directly up, that same hill is in the background. So this took place directly in front of us, which is pretty exciting. You can also see some other pictures on here that's of things that took place at this site. But one thing that I want to point out is this plaque over here as well. So this is a heritage or vertical flight heritage site point. So this plaque signifies that Glenn Curtis worked with John Newton Williams to demonstrate a rotary wing test at this site. So it is one of the earliest, one of the first significant efforts to develop a helicopter in the United States, and that was using a Curtis engine. All right, so here we are at our next stop. This is the site of Glenn Curtis's early seaplane base. This is where a lot of his experiments with flying boats and seaplanes, the Triad in particular, took place right here on this shore. You guys can see off in the distance there in the water on the pole is actually a model of the Triad. So it just kind of signifies again that all of his early experiments took place right here. And if we turn around and look this way, you guys can see some ball fields and some buildings. Off in the distance is the school buildings for Hammondsport Central School District. But back when Glenn Curtis was here, this was all just one big empty field that led right into the lake. So it was a perfect spot for his experimental flying field, for his flying school, and all the different sites of his aircraft base could take place right here. And it led right into the water, so it was a perfect evolution right into working on seaplanes. Now if we walk a little bit closer, there's this nice little monument here that's dedicated to Glenn Curtis. On it you can see that it says Glenn Hammond Curtis, father of naval aviation, and his birth and death date right there. And again, it's just overlooking Keuka Lake. Here is a storyboard that talks a little bit more about his time here on this shore. So feel free to take a walk down here sometime and do a little bit more research. We'll just get one more look of Curtis's early seaplane base and a base for his flying school right here on Keuka Lake, just outside of Hammondsport, and then we are off to our next location, which is the site of the flight of the Junebug. So here we are on the next site of the Curtis Heritage Trail. We are looking at a field, but this field back on July 4th of 1908 was the site of the very first pre-announced and publicly witnessed flight in America. This was the site of Curtis's flight of the Junebug. Well over 1,000 people came to witness this first flight. And that was a mixture of just spectators, there were military representatives, and there were also newspaper reporters here to report on this historic moment. And right here you can see the storyboard that has a little bit more history about this as well. So we are actually on the land of Pleasant Valley Wine Company. So the visitor center is right behind us. If you walk this way, you'll end up at Mercury headquarters. And this is the same site where the Junebug took off and landed during that historic flight. So our next stop is actually the Pleasant Valley Cemetery. That's where Glenn was buried. So I will see you there. So we are at the last site of the Curtis Heritage Trail, and that is Pleasant Valley Cemetery, which is the final resting place for Glenn Curtis. Glenn passed away in 1930, and he was buried here in Hammondsport, even though at the time he was living in Florida. So here we are at the final resting place for Glenn Curtis, as well as his wife Lena, who is the first stone there with the yellow flowers in front of it. She passed away in 1951. Then there is Glenn's grave here that has a bunch of coins and stones on top, as well as some purple flowers right to the right of the stone there. He passed away in 1930. Next is his son Carlton, who passed away at 11 months old in 1902. And then finally, we have Glenn Jr., who passed away in 1969. So this is the final resting place for the Curtis family. Glenn is obviously still very well respected. A lot of people come and visit his stone and leave behind coins as a sign of respect for him and all that he did and all the contributions he made, not only for aviation, but just the world in general. And that is it for the Curtis Heritage Trail. Thank you all for coming with me today. I am going to leave a picture of the map in the comments below so you guys can visit these sites on your own and experience this history for yourself. Please leave any comments in the comments below, any questions in the comments below, and also any ideas you guys might have for future videos. We are hoping to do a lot more of these, and we'd love to hear your suggestions. Please stay safe and healthy out there, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye.